I have a confession to make. I think I like Super Street Fighter 2 on the Sega Genesis better than the Super Nintendo version. I think, maybe, kind of. Who knows? Let's find out. So, Super Street Fighter 2 is quite possibly my favorite Street Fighter game. It's either that or Alpha 2. They kind of go back and forth in my mind like a seesaw. But I definitely, between those two, it's kind of a toss up. It's really tough. I love Super Street Fighter 2 though. Street Fighter 2 was awesome, the first one, and I was definitely around for it. But Super wasn't until I really got into it. I really started to care about motions and figuring out how the game played and patterns and all types of stuff. Um, Super Street Fighter was just awesome. Like you had this cool little intro with Ryu. You had multiple new colors for the characters. We had four brand new characters who were all pretty kick ass, and then we had updated endings, the same endings from before, but they got like retouched, remodeled. So that was really awesome. It definitely was kind of like an expansion or just a better version of Street Fighter 2. It showed. That's why I pretty much own Super Street Fighter 2 in like every form. Got it on the Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, PlayStation on the collection, Sega Saturn, obviously ROMs, whatever you name it. Um, but nothing compares to that first feeling when I played the game. Back when my brother and I first rented it, I mean, we rented that game like crazy. Yes, back when we used to rent games. Um, we probably rented Super Street Fighter 2 like 10 times. Like, it was pretty intense, but we loved it. Obviously, it was a Super Nintendo version because I'm pretty biased. I'm a Super Nintendo guy. I love the Sega Genesis, but I'm definitely a Super Nintendo guy. I definitely prefer that system over the Genesis. So naturally, we would rent games for the Super Nintendo. So Super Street Fighter 2 was no exception. So we played it, loved it. It's cool, great. And then sometime down the road, obviously, we saw the Sega Genesis version. I remember first seeing it in a magazine, and they were hyping it up and talking about how, oh, it's got more megs, more power, so it's better, closer to the arcade than a Super Nintendo one. And I'm reading this, and I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool, interesting. All right, all right. And so I remember we eventually had rented the Sega Genesis version. I kid you not, we rented it for one day, and well, I should say this: we rented it for 3 days, but we ended up returning it the same day we rented it. Yeah, needless to say, we didn't like it. We felt it was horrible. I remember popping it in and hearing the sound and the music. And it was just so rough and just ugh, sounded awful. I mean, Street Fighter is known mainly for its combat, of course, but also for its catchy tunes, right? Who doesn't want to battle it out to Guile's theme or Ken's theme or Ryu's theme? They're awesome. So you play Street Fighter and all you hear is ding ding, hearing these sounds, pretty much just noise. It was like, ugh, I can't do this. And not to mention the visuals, like the color, it was very muted and dull. There were less colors on the screen because obviously the Genesis couldn't put out what the Super Nintendo put out in terms of color, so it also looked worse. I remember looking at some of the characters like Cammy. It was all bad. I mean, we played it and we were just like, no. We returned it the same day and we ended up renting the Super Nintendo one once again. So yeah, for the longest time, Super Nintendo one was far head and shoulders above the Genesis one. You couldn't even compare them in my mind. There was no way. Well, fast forward a couple years. Obviously, I'm a little older now, and I purchased the Genesis one myself, and I played it again. Played it a couple times, and it was like every time I played it, the game kind of got better to me. You know, I started to see things. I still was pro Super Nintendo. I was still all in on that version, but I started to realize, Genesis one's not too rough, too bad. Um, and then, it wasn't until I'd say fairly recently, maybe like a year or 2 years ago, started playing the Genesis one again, and it really dawned on me. And I went, huh, the Genesis one actually plays closer to the actual arcade version. If you really play both games, if you want the one that's closest to the arcade experience, believe it or not, it's the Sega Genesis. And I know you're probably thinking, no, wait, how? Wait. No, hear me out. Again, the Super Nintendo one's cool. It's good. Right off the bat, sounds better. Sound effects are crisp, they're clear. The music is much better. Sounds pretty close to the original tunes. The colors are instantly better. Far more colors on the screen. They're less muted, very bright. So it just overall looks better. Looks and sounds better. All right. But I would argue that's pretty much all the Super Nintendo has over the Genesis, which are good things, but they're kind of more along the cosmetic side of things, if you know what I mean. Where the Genesis one, to me, plays just like the arcade. Like the arcade has a flow and feel to it. The Genesis version is the closest to that version. The Super Nintendo is almost like it's a modified. It's almost like they just did something. They just, what, let's put our own thing in there, whatever, make it play like, Street Fighter 2 remix or whatever the case may be. Just trust me, if you play the arcade one, then go play the Super Nintendo version, you'll notice there's a difference in the way it feels, the way certain combos, and just the whole overall feel of the game. Whereas the Genesis one very much feels like the arcade. You know, Obviously I don't have an arcade here in my home, but luckily I do have that Street Fighter collection that came out on PS4 that also includes the arcade versions of those titles. But it also too got Street Fighter collection on the PS1 and on the Saturn, which they're not arcade perfect, surprisingly, but they're very close to it. And I gotta say, the Genesis version is close to it. Heck, even the sound effects, as bad as they are on the Genesis, as we can hear right now, they're actually closer to the arcade. If you listen to the arcade sound effects and when you land a punch or a kick and it has that crushing sound, right? The Genesis, you can see it attempts to mimic it, and it does actually a pretty decent job. Now, obviously, the sound quality is not as good, but it still does a decent job of mimicking that crushing blow. Whereas the Super Nintendo version, it's very soft. I can't even explain it. Sound. It's not close. It's not the same. Um, Also, the Genesis one, when you beat your opponent, when the round is over, I should say, sorry, and you go to the next round, the music continues to play. Now, yes, the music is crappy on the Genesis, but still, the music does continue just like the arcade version. And then just the overall flow of combat, the timing, the frames. I feel like its Genesis one does an excellent job of actually mimicking what it felt like playing it in the arcades. You know, all this is not to say the Super Nintendo one's bad. I still love it. I still cherish it. But this is just me giving my flowers and props to the Sega Genesis version, which for the longest time I've shunned and said, heck no, put it in the fire. I never want to see it again. It's become a copy I've learned to love, and like I said, it's kind of tough for me. As for now, which one I think is better, and it's tough because I've always thought one was more superior, and now it's kind of like, well, they're kind of even. They both definitely have their pros and cons, but the Genesis one, I don't know. I enjoy playing it. When I put it in, ignoring all the bad audio crap, I enjoy playing it more than the Super Nintendo one, because again, I feel like I'm playing it how it's supposed to be played. Um, so yeah, it's me kind of just thinking out loud one day and wondering, hey, let me put a video to this, because I'm wondering if other people have the same thought process I do, or always thought the same thing and said, you know what, Super Nintendo one's far superior. I don't want to hear it. And if that's the case, cool. But definitely, I'd say give the Genesis version a shot. Give it a try. It's good. You'll warm up to it if you can just get past the horrible soundtrack. I just, good lord, the Genesis just was a lot of their games. Some games they had some nice catchy tunes like Streets of Rage or Sonic, and then some games it was just ugh, wanted to just cut your ears out. So this is one man's tale, one man's story about how he came to love Super Street Fighter 2 on the Sega Genesis. Wonder what you guys think? Let me know down in the comments below. Hopefully you enjoyed this quick little video. And again, I'll give you more personal stories like this as I will talk about my past, Street Fighter and Capcom, and what these games meant to me. So catch you guys later. Please take care.